Okay.
Okay. So we are going ahead with the introduction, right? So Amrishi, we are live. Should we start?
Yeah, it's already live.
Okay. Thank you so much. So very good evening to everyone that is listening to us. I welcome all the participants, esteemed doctors that are attending our program via Zoom platform. Curious Mankind Specialities, and on behalf of mankind, I feel extremely proud, and I feel extreme levels of gratitude that today we have with us one of the pioneers in the field of cardiology, Dr. Vivek Gupta with us. Professor Dr. Vivek Gupta, I think everybody knows about sir, that he's a chief interventional cardiologist at the Apollo Hospitals in New Delhi. He's a DM cardiologist with a lot of degrees. He's the chairman of Indo-American, European, and Arabic conclaves. And when I talk about his professional work, he's a doctor with international fame. He has been associated, in the field of cardiology since 1998. And when I talk about his work, especially in the area of coronary angiography, balloon angioplasty, stenting, and pacemakers, it is unparalleled. He's the founder president of the charitable foundation, MI International Heart and Healthcare Foundation. And he's also a founder member of same organization in Paris and France. When I talk about his experience, he has performed thousands of coronary angiographies, simple and complex angioplasty and stent procedures in India and abroad. He was instrumental in starting primary angioplasty, multi-vessel angioplasty, and stent implantation in India way back in 1998. He's also associated the first time the procedure of TAVI, that is transcatheter aortic valve implantation, which is a non-surgical implantation of the aortic valve. When I talk about his career abroad in France, he's worked, in Hospital Charles, that is from 1996 to 1998 with Professor Alan Kriber, who is the world authority in the field of interventional cardiology. Sir has been associated with, has had a lot of gold medals and silver medals in the field, and he was actually a gold medalist in 1987. At the age of 33 years, he was perhaps the youngest doctor to join as a senior consultant at the famous Apollo Hospital in Delhi. When I talk about charitable activities, as the founder president of MI International Heart and Heart Care Foundation, Dr. Gupta has carried out more than 10,000 charitable camps in various locations of North India and has benefited more than 50 lakh patients. Of free patient treatment, he's been instrumental in bringing the concept of free treatment of life, saving bypass surgery and angioplasty for the poor patients. When I talk about his association with the Indo, French, and European cardiology specialty hospitals, that has been with various state governments of India. When I talk about academic activities, sir is a course chairman for International Cardiology Teaching Course and Indo-European course on revascularization for young interventional cardiologists. More than 14 such courses have been conducted in India and in Europe under his guidance. Sir has published a lot of articles, and is a renowned figure in the field of cardiology. So, sir, we are really overwhelmed. We really thank you for giving us time. And, sir, over to you, for this interesting session on rivaroxaban. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank Ritesh for a very nice introduction. And secondly, I thank the division of Mankind, especially Mayank and other team members, for giving me the opportunity to speak about the important topic. And basically, we are talking about how to prevent further problems in the patients of heart disease as well as peripheral vascular disease. So this has been a big problem for last so many years. Without wasting much time, because I have been late myself in starting this program, so let me start screen share and slideshow so that we can start discussing something which is very relevant in today's scenario. So screen share. You have to stop. Okay, you have to stop screen sharing. Okay.
Yes, stop screen share. Yes.
Can you see the slides now?
Yes.
Okay, so coming to the topic, which is basically a rivaroxaban, we'll talk about This is, of course, one of the anticoagulant which is being used basically, but we'll talk about science and how it is more useful than other, especially in chronic cardiovascular disease and also in acute and chronic peripheral vascular disease. The topic is a novel campus for simplifying therapy and symbolizing compliance. This is very important, compliance of the patient, because whenever we talk of patients, number of medicine, when you increase, they always start shouting, or not shouting, but they always feel, so let us see the compliance part also. So objective will be, we'll understand the NOAC journey, which is a novel oral anticoagulants. Novel means new, and new means because earlier it was another therapy which was being used. This time we are using novel oral anticoagulants, which NOAC can be used for wide spectrum of indication of rivaroxaban, is the drug of choice across wide spectrum of indication. So we have to zero in upon rivaroxaban and how it is actually a drug of choice. So we'll give some science and then we'll talk about the history. And then, of course, we'll go ahead. So we know that for the time immemorial, we have been using anticoagulants, which basically vitamin K antagonist. And when it's true, the heparin was introduced in 1939, about 10 years before our independence. Of course, we don't want to correlate this with independence, but of course, just because recently we crossed 15th August, so it is in the mind. Then we had 1941 diacomarolol, and then warfarin came in 1954, which is an oral vitamin K antagonist. And then this was 1950. And then, of course, low molecular weight heparin came in 1985, which is very important, being used by us regularly in many acute coronary syndromes and, of course, post-PTCA in complex angioplasties cases, which is our passion in Apollo Hospital, Delhi, and a lot of people are using it. Coming to 2000, we started having bivalirudin, which was being used for a long time, especially post-PTCA again, and also in acute MIs. Then fondaparin, which was introduced, which is like a low molecular weight heparin. And then came the year from 2008 onwards. This is the time when we started having novel oral anticoagulants. Dabigatran, rivaroxaban, apixaban, endoxaban, and hidaruzumab. So that means it's only 12 years we have seen NOAC, but still we call it NOAC because they were novel. Because they were novel, because they were beyond LMWH, beyond warfarin, and beyond heparin. And of course, they are always oral. They are oral anticoagulants. So this is very important. They are not injectable, while LMWH is injectable. So changing paradigm in anticoagulation, oral anticoagulants, the basic purpose is prevent and treat, especially with deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism. Let me tell you, pulmonary embolism is a very common mostly undiagnosed cause of sudden death. And therefore, we have to be very careful in treating DVT and prevent pulmonary embolism. And many times you cannot diagnose. There are a lot of causes which are there, and mostly people say heart attack ho gaya, patient ki death ho gaya. Actually, it is not. It is pulmonary embolism massive which has caused death of the patients. Most common undiagnosed cause of death is pulmonary embolism. And here, oral anticoagulants are useful. It prevents arterial thromboembolism in patients with atrial fibrillation. Again, a stroke, because atrial fibrillation is also very commonly undiagnosed disease. So coming on to the vitamin K administration, challenges associated with the vitamin K antagonist administration, which are, of course, which is azithromycin or warfarin, which we are using regularly. It has a narrow therapeutic range. You have to maintain INR of 2 to 3, and therefore you have to ask the patient to do blood test every month or every 2 months. You require a constant monitoring and dose adjustment. You require a slow onset and offset of effect. It is slow onset. It takes 2-3 days for the effect to come. Inhibits the natural anticoagulant proteins C and S, causing temporary imbalance in favor of procoagulant factors. It has got multiple food and drug interaction. Very important, because we always tell this patient not to eat the green leafy vegetables. There's a dietary restriction and reduced quality of life. And there's a risk of intracranial hemorrhage. And of course, it's resistant due to genetic polymorphism. So that is why we wanted some alternative to VKA administration, which is being used post-valve replacement as well as prevention of stroke in atrial fibrillation, and also in deep vein thrombosis and other diseases where there is thrombosis formation. So this alternative came with the NOAC, novel oral anticoagulants. And as we told, that dabigatran 2010, rivaroxaban 2011, apixaban 2012, and endoxaban 2015. So all these NOACs were introduced beyond in this decade only, last decade, and it has been very useful. They are actually direct thrombin inhibitors, which is dabigatran, while factor 10 inhibitors, rivaroxaban and apixaban, and they prevent thrombosis by either direct thrombin inhibition or by factor 10 inhibition. So use of NOAC in wide spectrum of indications. Dabigatran should be used in atrial fibrillation and atrial fibrillation plus PCI stent and atrial fibrillation with renal impairment. Rivaroxaban has got an increased indication. As you can see from this slide, they are used, and which will improve in the next few slides, in chronic cardiovascular syndrome, in post-MI and peripheral vascular disease, where neither dabigatran or apixaban are indicated. And this is the beauty of this rivaroxaban, that we have got enough evidence to use rivaroxaban on top of dual antiplatelet agents, which is aspirin and clopidogrel, in the indications of chronic cardiovascular syndrome, post-MI and peripheral vascular disease. And they further reduce MACE as well as mortality associated with these three things. But that's what today's topic is. Today's topic is to prove beyond doubt that rivaroxaban should be used in addition to dual antiplatelet, or in addition to aspirin, or in addition to clopidogrel in these three indications. The pharmacological characteristics of oral anticoagulant, as you can see, the protein binding coming to rivaroxaban directly, it is protein binding, it's a once daily regimen. That's most important. I think rest are not so important for the clinicians. Dosing regimen, of course, dabigatran is twice daily, apixaban is twice daily, but rivaroxaban is once daily. And doxaban is also once daily, but is not commonly available. So this is very important, that this salt is not twice daily, it is once a day. Rationale for using anticoagulation for cardiovascular prevention. Coming on to the cardiovascular prevention now directly. What are the rationale of using this in cardiovascular prevention? So natural history of chronic coronary syndrome, a dynamic process. You see a patient who has got a plaque, and this is subclinical phase. When we do angiography or CT coronary angiography, we find there is a 20% plaquing, and the patient is clinically absolutely asymptomatic. Then there is a phase where you have done a revascularization, and this is less than 12 months beyond this, and then you see the revascularization process. What this natural history dynamic process. Just a minute. The window of Zoom is preventing the slides actually. Okay, I'll move this side. So high risk with insufficiently controlled risk factors, suboptimal lifestyle modification or medical therapy, large area of risk like myocardial ischemia. This is there. So what this salt is doing is lowering the risk for the optimally controlled risk factors, lifestyle changes, adequate therapy for secondary prevention. So what we want is adequate therapy for secondary prevention. This has already been using aspirin, statins, and ACE inhibitors are already well established, and of course appropriate revascularization. These are already available things which are available. Coming on to the next slide so that we can discuss about other things. Incidence of MACE. Incidence of MACE according to the history of ischemic agents. If we see first year, second year, third year, and fourth year, it is going stable atherosclerosis without ischemic event at baseline. How to bring this zoom people down so that it does not disturb the slide.
Amrishi, are you there?
Okay, I can do now. I finished. Okay, now it's better.
Okay.
So the 4-year incidence of MACE in patient with or prior ischemic event is 18.3%, which is quite high overall. So this is the incidence of MACE. A holistic approach to the vascular protection. We have to do some vascular protection. We have to control of risk factors to limit atherosclerotic progression and stabilizing existing plaques. And what are the things which we can do? We can do lifestyle changes. This is a holistic approach. We have to avoid smoking, let the patients stop smoking, regular exercise, healthy diet, weight management, and psychosocial support. These are the lifestyle changes which are required. Medical therapies, lipid control statins, hypertension control ACE inhibitors, diabetes control insulin, and anti-glycemic drugs. These are the medical therapy. But we have to do on top of this, we have to do a prevention of blood clot formation over any ruptured, eroded atherosclerotic plaque. This is something which is additionally required. And here comes the role of antithrombotic therapy. either single antiplatelet therapy with aspirin or clopidogrel. This is already we are using it. But despite all these things, we still have a significant number of patients who have major acute adverse events, and a lot of patients, they also have acute rupture of plaque leading to MI. So we have to find something more than this. Thrombus made of both platelets and fibrin. This is the thrombus which is made of platelets and fibrin. Why we should add a factor Xa inhibitor? Now we're talking about factor Xa inhibitor, which is rivaroxaban. Two dual antiplatelet agents. Thrombin is the most, why? Thrombin is the most potent stimulant of platelets. Thrombin itself is the most potent stimulus of platelets. Aspirin and thienopyridine, which is clopidogrel, do not block activation of platelet by thrombin. Blocking Xa inhibition inhibits thrombin formation both from intrinsic and extrinsic coagulation pathways, and which leads to platelet activation, and therefore platelet activation diminishes over time after an acute coronary syndrome event. And thrombin generation, in contrast, is persistently elevated following ACS, is related to adverse outcome and is reduced by rivaroxaban. So how factor Xa? Because the thrombin generation is in contrast is persistently elevated following ACS, and we have to block this thrombin generation, because thrombin itself is a potent stimulation for the platelets, which can lead to thrombus formation. And therefore factor Xa inhibition, in addition to dual antiplatelet, should be useful. This is the actually hypothesis. And platelet amplification, two positive feedback loops. Now at one point you are already reducing the ADP secreted by a platelet, which is thienopyridine, and of course ADP activates platelets, which is blocked by thienopyridines. Thrombin made on platelet surface, by blocking Xa inhibition, you are preventing thrombin, most potent activator of platelet, and therefore that is why thrombus formation will be further, and therefore this is double amplification, burst activating growth of thrombus. So we have to actually avoid the thrombus formation inside the coronary arteries. On top of dual antiplatelet, if we add a factor Xa inhibitor, then of course it's a double amplification effect on prevention of thrombus formation. In general, ACS management is of course dual antiplatelet is a recommended guideline all over the world. Rivaroxaban vascular dose plus antidiabetic is an alternate. Here we are replacing, actually not replacing, we are adding vascular dose of plus diabetic is an alternative. This causes significant reduction in CV death and all-cause mortality and secondary prevention of ACS in the acute phase. And of course, we have to select the right patient. And right patient is the patient who does not have any major bleeding history. If you have a major bleeding history, then you cannot use this. You have to use it with caution. So with increased ischemic risk and without increasing bleeding risk, you have to balance the benefit ratio. So if you have elevated cardiac biomarkers, if you have multivessel disease, if you have controlled diabetes, but patient has a hypercholesteremia, it is a patient who has got an increased ischemic risk. These are the patients where you can add rivaroxaban. And without increasing the bleeding risk, there should not be any history of stroke. There is no current or recent condition at the significant risk of bleeding. And of course, hemoglobin should not be low. So this is how you choose the right patient. ATLAS trial, coming on to the ATLAS trial, which was published in 2011, New England Journal of Medicine 2012, they used rivaroxaban vascular dose, and they found reduced CV events and death in patients with acute coronary syndrome. So this was the only trial which showed that in acute coronary syndrome, if you add vascular dose, that means a lower dose, which is 2.5 milligram once a day, rivaroxaban, this is the CV death, MI stroke, CV death, all-cause mortality, all are reduced. This is the ATLAS trial, and rivaroxaban 2.5 milligram tablet administered with aspirin or with aspirin plus clopidogrel. Toclopidine is finished now. It has been completely replaced. At that time in 2011-12, toclopidine was available, and that is why the trial showed toclopidine is indicated for the prevention of atherothrombotic events in adult patients for acute coronary syndrome with elevated biomarkers. This was the result of ATLAS trial. Coming on to the second important trial, CAMPUS trial, which we will take up very soon. Vascular protection strategy for secondary prevention. Now we're talking about secondary prevention after ACS. The dual pathway inhibition with rivaroxaban and aspirin should be seen as a part of overall vascular protective strategy. On top of lipid lowering, blood pressure lowering, ACE inhibitors, if you add rivaroxaban and aspirin, plus aspirin of course, the overall MACE is reduced by 26%, stroke by 44%, as compared to 15% by lipid lowering and 32% by ACE inhibitor, which is HOPE trial, and of course MI by 14% and death by 23%. The most important part is this 23% reduction in death. If you add rivaroxaban, and this is the beauty of which has been shown by CAMPUS trial, the benefits of dual pathway inhibition are on top of standard control of lipids, blood pressure, and RAS blockade. That means you are already controlling lipids by statins, you're already controlling blood pressure by hypertensive, you are already using RAS blockade for blood pressure control, and of course we have a pleiotropic effect of ACE inhibitors and RAS blockade. Further on top of that, if you use rivaroxaban, the further reduction in MACE, stroke, and death. This is what is shown by this slide. The therapy that significantly reduces stable CAD and or peripheral, now we're talking about peripheral vascular disease also. The CAPRI trial showed aspirin and clopidogrel reduction in MACE by 9.9% risk reduction. Charishma, which was clopidogrel plus aspirin versus placebo plus aspirin, again clopidogrel trial. Pegasus, which was ticagrelor trial, reduction in MACE by 16% risk reduction. And CAMPUS trial has shown that if you add rivaroxaban plus aspirin versus aspirin alone in patients with stable CAD, the MACE reduction is 24%. That means CAMPUS has shown that in chronic CAD, stable CAD patients, this is better than what CAPRI and Karishma and Pegasus told, and therefore it is one important consideration. And reduction in all-cause mortality is also there in the patients when you add rivaroxaban, as confirmed by CAMPUS trial. So CAMPUS tested a dual pathway. Objective was to determine the efficacy and safety of rivaroxaban, vascular dosage of rivaroxaban plus aspirin or aspirin alone for reducing the risk of MI, stroke, and cardiovascular death in patients with CAD. We are not using here clopidogrel. Here we are using either rivaroxaban plus aspirin versus aspirin alone. And this is what they have shown. Rivaroxaban plus aspirin, 30-day washout period, rivaroxaban alone and aspirin alone. And key inclusion criteria was prior MI. Very important. The patient was post-MI, multivessel coronary artery disease or multivessel devascularization, plus age more than 65. And key exclusion criteria was stroke or severe heart failure or need for dual antiplatelet therapy. That means you can't, this trial was done in 27,000 patients. And when the dual antiplatelet therapy was already stopped, because if the patient was already requiring dual antiplatelet therapy, then this was the exclusion criteria. That means this was only possible 1 year post MI or 1 year post revascularization by angioplasty or stent. And they showed that efficacy, major adverse vascular event was reduced. If you see in the rivaroxaban group versus aspirin group, that means MACE was reduced, MI was almost the same, but stroke and CV death was reduced without increase in fatal or non-fatal intracranial hemorrhage. Chronic cardiovascular disease, who derive the greatest benefit from CAMPUS regime, as you can see, these are the patients who are actually, if you see, those patients who have more than 3 to 4 risk factors as compared to 2 risk factor or 1 risk factor, the patients who had more risk factors were most benefited by addition of rivaroxaban, as shown by this CAMPUS trial. And also in the European Heart Journal. So coming on to the guideline, which is European Heart Journal 2019, high-risk patients who receive enhanced vascular protection in line with 2019 European CCS guideline, adding a second antithrombotic drug to aspirin for long-term secondary prevention should be considered patient with high risk of ischemic events and without high bleeding risk, class 2A. Now, ESC guideline, class 2, adding a second antithrombotic to aspirin for long-term secondary prevention may be considered patient with at least a moderately increased risk patients. That means if you have a high risk of ischemic event, you should always add. If you have moderately risk of ischemic event, you should consider it. And what are the moderately reduced and high risk? High risk is diffuse multiple CAD and at least one of the following: diabetes, recurrent MI, or peripheral vascular disease or CKD. Moderate, in the moderate you have diabetes, recurrent MI, PAD, but at least one of the following. Here you have at least one plus diffuse multivessel CAD by coronary angiography. And dosage regimen, as you can see, the dosage regimen is twice a day, post-MI 1 year, and multivessel CAD. And this is the European guidelines which are shown addition. Coming to the Indian context, as I told you, these patients were patients with a age more than 65 years, and age less than 65 plus atherosclerosis. Indian context, we have a different in India. In India, the patient has got those patients who were less than, I'm sorry, I was mute. COMPASS in Indian context is important because the patients of CAD in India are slightly younger as compared to the Western counterpart. And this was a study by Praful Kelkar, our friend, who in the Indian Heart Journal, they said that patients who should be even less than 65 years should be considered for rivaroxaban in chronic cardiovascular disease post-MI at first year. So this is important information which has been derived by this. So CAMPASS regimen is the first long-term antithrombotic since ASA, since aspirin to reduce mortality versus aspirin alone. It is just repeating the same thing, rivaroxaban plus ASA, reducing 24% risk reduction of MACE, 42% stroke, 14% MI, and death by 18%, which is very important, comparing to CAPRI and KARISMA trial where dual antiplatelet has been used. Coming on to the peripheral vascular patients also. The peripheral vascular disease patients are actually, there is a lot of patients who have a combined PAD plus CAD. As you can see, 27% of the population, they have a combined CAD. That means the patients who have PAD will have associated CAD, and those patients who have CAD will have associated peripheral vascular disease also. The combination is quite common, and therefore we have to see whether there is any role of rivaroxaban coming into peripheral vascular disease patients, whether there is a role of rivaroxaban in peripheral vascular disease patients also or not. And because of substantial patient overlap between CAD and PAD, the REACH registry was done, which enrolled 67,000 patients with CAD, PAD, and cerebral vascular disease also. 25% patients with CAD had disease in other vascular beds also, and 2 to 3 further fold increase in risk of stroke. That means those patients who have PAD, they have a 3 times more chances of having a stroke. And the patient who have PAD, 61% patient will have PAD. This is what the REACH registry has told us. And therefore, we have to be very clear about this situation, that how this is working. Yeah. So, okay. Antithrombosis, just a minute. Okay, coming on to current treatment strategy of patient with PAD. Symptom improvement by exercise, by pharmacological treatment like Silostol. Silostol is a very important treatment which helps in pain prevention in patients who have got peripheral vascular disease. And of course, you can do angiography or peripheral angiography and stent placement or revascularize by surgery. And CV risk reduction is done by lipid lowering, statins, antihypertensive medicines, ACE inhibition, diabetes therapy, smoking cessation, antiplatelet drugs. The patient with chronic PAD remains at high and limb despite guideline recommended therapy. Clopidogrel versus aspirin, symptomatic PAD, CAPRI, ticagrelor versus eculid. But here you see in these patients who have got the KARISMA subgroup, you have clopidogrel plus aspirin. So these are three major trials which are shown the improvement, but there's some increase in the bleeding in these patients. But when you add this coming on to these patients, PAD patient vulnerable after revascularization, risk in patient undergoing peripheral vascularization, acute and post-stable phase, patient require many times amputation, and of course there is the acute limb ischemia, and these are the patients who also have got MI and stroke. Outcome after operation are poor with 15% disabled. So overall, this slide shows that these patients are quite risky patients, and the outcome is not so good in general. High risk, but there are only very few preventive strategies. Despite the high risk, currently there is no proven antithrombotic strategy that has demonstrated efficacy for reducing the major adverse limb and cardiovascular events after peripheral intervention for ischemia. Those patients who have got intervention, further reocclusion or prevention of cardiovascular event, there is hardly any medicine as of now. The CAMPASS trial enrolled patients for PAD also, and they found that there's a new option which is antithrombotic by factor 10A inhibition can be used, and dual pathway inhibition with rivaroxaban 2.5 mg significantly reduced MACE by 28% and major acute limb ischemia events by 46% versus aspirin. So the beauty of the CAMPASS trial is not only it showed efficacy in patients of chronic cardiovascular disease, but also in reduction in MACE and also major acute limb events by 46% in the patients of post-limb intervention. So this is what you can see here is like PAD plus CAD, CAMPASS subgroup, MACE reduction 28%, acute or chronic limb ischemia by 46%, and major impartation by 70%. This is very highly significant and very important to note that in patients who have got a chronic or acute limb ischemia, addition of rivaroxaban on top of silostazol or statins or aspirin, it is further reducing acute and chronic limb ischemia and just reducing the chances of major amputation. So new guideline recommendation now, if you see the 2019 ESVM guidelines, the combined therapy of aspirin and rivaroxaban should be considered in PAD patient without a high risk of bleeding or other contraindication, class 2A. 2A is a very important level of evidence B. And global vascular guidelines in management CLTI consider low dose aspirin and rivaroxaban 2.5 mg to reduce adverse cardiovascular event and lower extremity event in patient with CLTI class 2AB. And ESC, ESCD guidelines on diabetes prevention in patient with diabetes and chronic symptomatic lead without high risk bleeding, level of class 2A. So rivaroxaban, way forward in 2021, recently introduced long-term secondary prevention therapies. Again, the same slide I would like to highlight here. Way forward, rivaroxaban plus aspirin, MACE, death, stroke, and MI. Even if you compare this with even the addition of SGLT2 inhibitor, which is very important for diabetes management, and they have shown that not only diabetes reduction, but they have shown their efficacy in MACE and death and stroke, PCSK9 inhibition, and triglyceride lowering, anti-inflammatory colchicine. On top of all these four, if you add rivaroxaban, there's an additional benefit in MACE, death, stroke, and MI. This is what is way forward in 2021. Another study which we want to highlight is Voyager PAD study, which has shown significantly reduced. It was published in NEJM in 2020. It has shown significantly reduced risk of composite primary endpoint by 15%. Acute limb ischemia, major amputation for vascular cause, myocardial infarction, ischemia, and all these things were further reduced, and CV death, and this was found to be useful. This is what Voyager study has shown in peripheral arterial disease patient. The peripheral arterial disease secondary outcomes in Voyager ischemia, if we compare placebo with rivaroxaban, and placebo here is of course aspirin. It is as if we compare this, that hazard ratio and of course p-value is significantly high in patient of vascular hospitalization, MI, ischemic stroke, chronic heart disease, and acute limb ischemia and amputation is significantly reduced in the patients who is receiving rivaroxaban on top of placebo. And also, of course, if you compare this, even the vascular hospitalization for coronary or thrombotic peripheral thromboembolism, this is also reduced in this slide, as you can see. Voyager PAD is the only large randomized study which has shown significant CV and limb benefit after peripheral revascularization. And Voyager, if you compare with Camper trial, where they have used only aspirin with clopidogrel, Mirror trial, they use aspirin with clopidogrel. What we're talking about is CV and limb benefit after peripheral limb vascularization on the long-term basis, rivaroxaban addition to aspirin versus aspirin alone. If you see the acute limb ischemia risk reduction by 33%, rehospitalization risk reduction by 28%, unplanned revascularization risk reduction by 12%, and primary efficacy endpoint superior reduction by 15%, and without increase in the major bleeding. So this is what Voyager trial has shown, that rivaroxaban, other than a Campus trial already is proven, but Voyager trial has also shown that post limb revascularization, addition of rivaroxaban on a chronic basis on top of aspirin reduces the risk of major advanced limb ischemia. Another acute intervention, long-term from acute intervention to long-term secondary prevention, rivaroxaban plus ASA reduces the risk of acute major limb and cardiovascular outcomes. Less MACE, less MALE, major acute limb events, less amputation, less unplanned revascularization, and less vascular hospitalization. This is what Campus is for the chronic phase, while Voyager has shown that you can start from the beginning after revascularization and finish off till that time. So Voyager is post-intervention, Campus is at vascular clinic without intervention, and those who have a high MACE risk and high MALE risk, these patients are benefited by addition of rivaroxaban 2.5 milligram low dose. So now you have multiple opportunities to enhance vascular protection anti-thrombotic therapy in patients with CAD, and you have 75-year-old CAD patient or 60-year-old worsening symptom, 73-year-old post-revascularization patient, amputation, and 57 intermittent claudication. In all these patients, you have to add these things. The stroke prevention is proven, we'll do in the next time, but coming on to the last slide, which is very important slide, which is of course the last summary slide I would like to tell about, that summarizing the whole thing what we have spoken. So DVT and atrial fibrillation we'll do the next time. So anticoagulation has progressed exponentially in the last 20 years. Rivaroxaban and apixaban are factor 10 inhibitors, whereas dabigatran is a direct thrombin inhibitor. Rivaroxaban and apixaban have low renal clearance as compared to dabigatran. Rivaroxaban is the only NOAC to be approved for the India for the prevention of ACS, chronic CAD and chronic PAD. Rivaroxaban is the only NOAC to be tested prospectively for specific renal dose rivaroxaban, and of course for renal functions, evidence of preservation of renal function with rivaroxaban versus warfarin now reiterated in guidelines. So to just summarize, finally, chronic cardiovascular disease, those patients with post-MI, you have to add rivaroxaban once there is no clear indication of dual antiplatelet. We are talking of rivaroxaban plus aspirin. In patients with peripheral vascular disease, you add again rivaroxaban post-limb intervention, as well as those patients we have not done any limb intervention, proven by campus trial, addition of rivaroxaban 2.5 milligram reduces all these things. I want to highlight one slide which I have shown, is a very important slide, which is almost highlighting everything. What we are preventing actually in limb, especially the limb. Yes, less MACE, less MALE, less amputation, less unplanned revascularization, less vascular hospitalization by addition of rivaroxaban. Thank you very much for the patient listening. I'm stopping the slide share, and we are now have only 2 minutes of discussion. And then, of course, Ritesh Bajaj, who has done a wonderful job and doing and along with Mayank, I thank again to do a wonderful job in planning this. Not when you give a lecture, you also learn, of course, and learning and exchange of knowledge is a key to success in all cases of clinicians. We clinicians are working hard during Corona, post-Corona, pre-Corona, and especially during the second phase, we were absolutely so busy. And as a clinician, we have to really work hard to prevent so many mortalities, morbidities in the patients. Now the public has also started recognizing the role of doctors, more so after the second wave and first wave. I really see that through this CME, I would like to tell the public, when it will go into public, the doctors in general are striving very hard. And of course, the public image was slightly tarnished by a few media. And these things are very bad, actually. 99% of doctors are working from dil se karte hain kaam. And of course, bread and butter, unfortunately, for the doctors also. And if you stop bread and butter from the point of writing a prescription, then the things will become more easy. But a lot of people, public, are tarnishing, especially the media, were tarnishing the image. But thanks to Corona, of course, Corona is something not to be thanked. But because of Corona, rather, not thanks, because of Corona, the image of the doctors have further enhanced, especially in the mind of public, that doctors are so useful. And of course, Dr. Sudhir Oswal has just stood up and working hard, and all the doctors are working very hard in such a scenario. Thank you very much, and we are open for some discussion, if at all.
Sir, thank you so much for such an enlightening talk. Sir, we've received some questions. Will we be taking questions? Should I ask the question?
But very briefly, because actually I was talking of media trial to see there's somebody, my sister is facing some problem. She's a very important physician and gynecologist in Lucknow. I have to talk to her. So we'll do very briefly, then I have to stop because then I have to speak to Lucknow.
So we'll take just one question. I think Dr. Rakesh Agarwal has asked from Faridabad that during initial period of ACS, we use low molecular weight heparin. Why don't we replace it with rivaroxaban? Or should we replace it with rivaroxaban? I think that is an important question.
Very valid question, but there is no trial as such. This can be done. And this thought process came to my mind also. Because it's a very thought-provoking question. I have to answer it by giving a thought process also. Because there is no major risk of bleeding increased by this. The advantage of low molecular weight heparin over the conventional heparin was actually that it is the risk of bleeding is not there. And of course, when you are using warfarin or heparin, when you are using heparin, you have to monitor by ACT, which is activated coagulation time, or APTT, which is done in the lab. While in low molecular weight heparin, there is no need for doing the monitoring, and you can do an enoxaparin 0.6 milligram subcutaneous BD. Similarly, in the oral anticoagulants, the similar advantage is there that there is no need to monitor the monitoring is not required. This is something which can be thought of, but we need a trial to do this because you see, acute coronary event is a very seriously life-threatening condition, and this cannot be done without a trial. Because, and secondly, one more thing which is coming, because the trial versus you cannot do versus placebo, you can only do versus conventional heparin, because the trials which were done for the low molecular weight heparin were against the conventional heparin, because you cannot risk a patient of acute coronary patient by not using heparin or any anticoagulant. So you cannot have a trial which can be planned for the NOAC versus just aspirin or clopidogrel. You can only plan a trial versus a conventional heparin, and this can be tried, and of course then only we will be able to safely say that you can use this, because otherwise there is no substitute for a low molecular weight heparin in acute coronary event, which is a life-threatening condition.
Right, sir. Sir, I think there is a trial with DVT and PE. I think we have a trial there, Einstein, where they've used heparin and they've compared with heparin and VK. So I think that can be tried in ACS also. Sir, thank you so much. I won't keep you. I think we would, on behalf of Curious and on behalf of Mankind, we would like to thank you for giving you.
I just want to say hello to Sudhir Oswal, who I can see is with a very white Modi style beard, and thank you.
Thanks.
And other speakers and other people who were listening, thanks for them. It's very late in the night. I was late by half an hour to start because I had some other thing to do in Apollo. And it's a very busy schedule for all of us. But I thank personally to all the doctors. Being a doctor, I thank doctors, because doctors' life is not easy. If a phone call rings at 10 p.m., Sudhir will take up the call, Dr. Oswal will take up the call and answer the query from the patient. And no other profession is so dedicated, and therefore I thank personally all the doctors who are doing a good job all over the country and all over the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you. Thank you.